Beaten ups are in essence violent games, but despite being able to beat the living heck out of your enemies, you won't see a drop of blood being spilled from them very often, and when it happens, it's just some shy red pixels floating around. Skinny and Franko turn this notch up a bit and bring us a game that can make Mortal Kombat look at it with curious interest. Blood, violence and gore are the hallmarks of this game that is a sequel to a very old Amiga beaten up. But before I forget, hi, I am Savino, and this is The Flying Kick. The story of Skinny and Franko is a simple one, as in most cases. The story starts with Franko being stuck in a dead-end job and talking to himself about how the heck he ended up in this position. When the last drop hit the bucket, he lost it, beat his superior and quit the job. Later that night, the phone rings and his friend Skinny tell him about a friend of the duo known as Little that was kidnapped by some gang after messing around with people he shouldn't when he was working as an investigative journalist. Now it's up to both to roam the streets and beat some goons until they find their friend. The game's story is pretty dark with some heavy comments about politics and capitalism and communist critiques. Coming from Poland, a country that was right in the middle of the crossfire in the Cold War, is more than comprehensive that the game floats around these themes. The story here is actually quite big. You have your intro, which will last you around 3 minutes, and you also get some short cutscenes between levels showing the shadow of Little tied to a chair while a voice interrogates him. During the gameplay, there will also be some bits of it in the form of speech balloons accompanied by voiceovers. Overall, the story is interesting, but you should be warned that, like the graphic violence in this game, the dialogues are filled with cursed words and, well, words that are a little more than that, if you know what I mean. All of this is used to introduce you to a very, very ugly world. And I'm not talking about the graphics here. The levels that we will explore in the game were meticulously crafted to look ugly. Graffiti on the walls, trash on the streets, broken cars parked on sidewalks, beggars walking around and broken buildings. Everything here reinforces the idea of a place suffering from corruption and abandonment by the authorities. It works pretty well, I will be honest, and while I listen to some complaints about the art style in the past, I will have to disagree with them and say that I like the visuals very much. The mix of realism in the backgrounds and the cartoonish and squashed characters, the ugliness of everybody, from the heroes to the baddies, and the way the city seems dirty and polluted, all of this, at least in my opinion, is enough to create a pleasant visual experience, even though, from time to time, something disgusting has to appear on the screen. Yeah, this developer went out of the way to ensure that they would include that particular thing that bothers you. I mean, Skinny and Franko in no way is a game that wants you to feel cozy, and the game makes it clear from the start. And sure, I can't talk about the graphics without talking about the graphic representation of violence. Skinny and Franko, as I mentioned in the intro, offers many ways to dispatch your enemies, most of which are very bloody. From broken limbs to shattered head, the details created to show how a street fight would be are impressive. You and your enemies can have faces disfigured after a beating, with clothes getting torn by the fight and hair getting messed up. There's a lot of attention to detail here, and it is a joy to see it in action. I will briefly mention how the scenarios also distort, breaks and reacts to your action, but this is something that I want to save for the combat section of this review. All in all, no matter if you like the art style or not, you can deny praising the developers for the level of care they put into the building of this world. Yes, it's not beautiful to see, and honestly, this is beautiful. To accompany your, let's call adventures around Poland, the developers picked a very solid soundtrack. Look, I will not pretend that I understand much about electronic music because I don't. I'm old like the rock and roll I listen to, but I like what I hear here. The music in the levels always starts low and slow, and soon it will build up with more instruments and samples and loops and all that good stuff that makes electronic music what it is. There are some pretty good tunes here that will rival the best OSTs around. Take a listen to some of them here so you can understand what I say. Did you hear that? Awesome stuff. This will put adrenaline in your blood, at least the blood that remains inside you, all the time while you're beating goons in the streets of Poland. The same can be said about most of the sounds. Punches, kicks, bone breaks, heads being bashed on iron poles, everything sounds very good here and you will be pleased with each and every strike you land. The game also has voiceovers in it, but things are a mixed bag in the best of cases. Competence of the actors aside, the developers made a weird choice here. Some voices are in English, but more often than not the enemies and the characters will speak only in grunts. It is a bit weird because you will hear the same sounds over and over again come from the most varied enemies saying the most diverse things. Not only that, but in some moments the grunts keep repeating in an eternal loop until you do something against the character who is speaking. While I understand from a cost perspective that having all line acted can be expensive, sometimes less is more and have the characters silence instead of grunting repeatedly the same grunt can be a better choice. Sure, as I said, they speak English in a few moments and for this reason alone, it sounds very strange when they don't. And with that part of the game concluded, let's jump into what really matters in these games, the combat. Skinny and Franko take a more realistic approach to combat. Gone are jumps, clear screen attack and sadly, flying kicks. But don't think the combat is simple because of that. Just like Vendetta from Konami, a more realistic approach can lead to a great amount of fun. Here you have a punch and a kick, each one with its own reach and strength, a button to grab your enemies, a run button, a block that can be used to perform a counter, and a button to grab items on the floor. You also have your special, which I will talk about later on. The combat feels great, it's visceral and you can feel every punch or kick or pile driver you land on your enemy. In combining punches and kicks, you can punish them even more, creating a sequence of strikes that can be very powerful to watch, not to mention fun. You can also press up and attack to bring a jump kick or perform a flying kick if you are running. See, I lied, there are flying kicks in this game. When grabbing an enemy, you can introduce him to your knee, throw them into others, or if the enemy is weak enough, you can carry him around and perform a finisher. These finishers are one of the best things in these games, they are brutal and bloody as heck. But what really shines here is the level of interaction with the scenario, which is perfect and honestly something that I would love to see in more games. You can throw enemies into walls, through windows, into cars, smash their heads against walls, lampposts, styro poles, break benches with their bodies. I mean, there are infinite ways to finish the baddies in this game and they are extremely fun to watch. And if there's nothing near that you can use, you can throw the enemy onto the floor with such a strength that even if they want, they wouldn't be able to get up. Oh, and while they are on the floor, you can finish some of the enemies, breaking their legs or arms in a pretty brutal way. And did I already mention the weapons? This game has more weapons that you could ask for. And I'm not talking about the basic baseball bat and knife. Oh no. Things here go a little overboard with the creativity and you will find all types of weapons. From the basics I mentioned before, to broken bottles, iron bars, piece of broken benches, boxes, buckets, anything that you can find that's not nailed to the floor, you can pick up and use as a weapon. Another thing that I like here is that piercing weapons are really piercing weapons. If you throw a broken bottle, a knife, or even an iron rod into your enemy's head, he will die instantly. And this works with every enemy in the game except for the bosses. This and the variety of weapons available makes the combat even more fun. Sure, there are many weapons like a piece of wood and a baseball bat that are basically the same, but how you find and acquire them is what makes them different. Bats, for example, are often carried by your enemies while planks can be found on the floor or after breaking benches or fences. This will make you scout the backgrounds, look for what you can break and what can be used as a weapon. There's a sense of discovery and interactivity that you rarely see in beat'em ups today, and this is a step beyond where the genre currently is. With today's hardware, creating all of this interaction and variety is way less demanding for the machines than a decade ago. Yes, it takes more time to code and develop it, but the result can improve the fun factor of your game a lot. The game offers you two characters to pick, the titulars Skinny and Franko, and they are somewhat different from each other. Skinny is faster and Franko is stronger. Both have some different displays for the same attack, but you have some attacks that are unique for each one. In the end, both are great to play, and I honestly don't know which one I like to play the most. So far, everything seems positive and sounds that Skinny and Franko is really a great game, but there are problems here, and unfortunately, there are a lot of them. First of all, Skinny and Franko isn't a fair game. Note that I played for this review in the hardest difficulty from the two readily available, and in no moment I tried the easy one, so all my critiques are for the hard mode. But what do I mean by unfair? Do I mean hard? No, unfair. Your characters are well equipped for the challenges, you have plenty of weapons, and extra lives and energy are easy to come by, but how the enemies fight against you isn't fun at all. At first, thanks to the bigger reach, you will be using your kicks way more than your punches. And not only because of the reach, but you will also notice pretty fast that most enemies can punch you while you're in the middle of your sequence of punches, and sometimes they can even overcome you. So it's more than fair to use the kicks to avoid this, but some of your enemies also can block your kicks and throw you onto the floor while they are at it. And here is the source of all mess that the combat of this game can become. As you can imagine, later in the game, there will be groups of enemies with extremely fast punchers and guys that can block your kicks, so no matter your strategy, you end up losing energy. Most of the time, you will be thrown left and right while taking punches with little to nothing that you can do to protect yourself. But sure, you can block incoming attacks and counter them, but the counter can be a little unreliable and you can take a lot of damage before it works properly. The same can be said about your special. There's a bar below your energy that fills up as you beat your enemies, but I don't know how it works. Sometimes the character performs a shoryuken, sometimes he gets all pissed and destroys the enemy with a sequence of punches. The only reliable thing here is the spinning punch that you can perform with less than the first half of your bar filled. I tried using the directional and other buttons to see if I was doing something wrong, but no dice. My character seems to do what he feels like. Now, let's talk about the bosses. They are also a bit problematic. They are extremely strong, some can kill you with a few hits, and most of the time you have no idea what he will do next. Most bosses and sub-bosses here don't telegraph their attacks, so again, you'll be thrown left and right without any idea of what to do to defend yourself. There are some hidden bosses scattered around the levels that, while would be fun to engage in combat with them to score an extra life or two, most of them are so overpowered that you will be better off ignoring them altogether than risking losing a life, because if you die in one of these secret rooms, you can go in there and try your luck again. Now, honestly, the real problem with this game is its length. This game is huge. You can't beat the 8 levels of the game in less than 2 hours, even if you rush, and most probably you will take around 3 hours or more on your first go. Some of the levels can take more than 30 minutes to beat, and for a beat'em up, that's a lifetime. I can beat modern beat'em ups in less time than I take to play one single level, not to mention the amount of frustration that we will feel when you find out that the huge boss that took ages to defeat was just a mid-level boss and you still have another 15 to 20 minutes of the same goons to fight before the real final boss. Look, I don't know about you, reviews are a very subjective thing, but this to me creates a sense of lack of progression that harmed my will to continue in the game, knowing that the next level could be even longer with another unfair boss in the middle was very frustrating. Or having to quit playing for whatever reason at the end of a 30-minute level also does not help the game. Beaten ups should be a quick affair. If you want your game to be longer, give the player the ability to quit and continue at any time, because having to restart a level that lasts the same as whole games isn't the most appealing of the features. Not to mention other frustrating glitches and design choices that are the cherry on top of this frustration cake. I won't take too long, I'm almost at 3000 words here, but another thing that bothered me here is the fact that grabbing enemies on the floor can be very unreliable. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and the fact that items that are on the floor will disappear under the piles of bodies that stay there during the whole game. So, if you're looking for a beer to replenish your health, you will have to walk and crouch around for a while in the hopes that one of your enemies may have dropped a bottle. These objects should be clearly visible to the player, realism or not. In conclusion, Skinny and Franko is a hard game to recommend. While it has a very fun combat with some excellent ideas and interactions with the scenario, the game is hampered by glitches and unfair difficulty and levels, oh boy, levels that seem to be endless, dragging the game for hours. I wanted to like this game, really, and in some ways I do. Vendetta is one of my favorite games ever, and this game reminds me a lot of it, but unfortunately, while I had a lot of fun with it, the frustrations piled up too much, and every time I was in the middle of a level, I started to wish I was playing something else. Skinny and Franko will be out later today for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, iArcade, and what's this? Atari VCS, something called Atari VCS, and will cost you 19 bucks. Yeah, 19. And that's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you have any additional questions, let me know in the comments. I hope you all have an awesome day, and remember, keep beating up.